is really simple. All right, one of our most important jobs as UX designers is to help our users understand what are the valuable things here in this digital environment. And we end up doing all sorts of really cute little things that actually end up making this an uphill battle for our users. All right. So today we're going to look at a masked object. So to recap, for those that are new to the channel, a masked object is when you have two very different things, two very different valuable things that are important to make sure that the user knows what they are in this digital environment that you've created. And you have these two different things or more look exactly the same. And what this does is it makes it really, really hard for users to differentiate what those things are and to understand the environment that they are in. So, are you ready for this masked object, Allie?
I'm ready. Let's dive in.
Okay, so this is from this app, Moonly. So let's go in, and it is a kind of astrology and tarot and all sorts of fun woo things in there. So when you go down, we've got a lot of cool features here, but I want to focus on this part right here. Now, what do you think is the difference between a full moon ritual and forgiveness?
Oh no. I mean, well, I'm seeing like forgiveness has meditation, but wow, they look the same. Other than the text, I don't know what forgiveness. I mean, they have background images. They look the same. They look similar.
Yes. They look exactly the same. They also have that yellow ring around it is basically the status that like I haven't clicked on that. So the same, it's communicating in the same way, which we can kind of discuss whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But basically these things are the exact same shape, exact same corner radius, exact same font. Everything is exactly the same, except for what we have is we have a little tiny bit of eyebrow text in all caps. It says article.
It's so hard to
versus,
see.
Versus meditation. Okay, and then we can go over, if we go over to healing, we've got healing. The healing tab. All the things for healing. Okay. So again, we've got these guys again. So we've got a little bit of shape shifting here too, because now we have like a different ratio, which is cool, but now we have, did we have the hearts before?
No. Oh, don't get me started on the hearts. Some broken.
No, we didn't have the hearts over here. Hearts don't exist over here, but they do exist over here in that upper corner. So again, now we have meditation. And we also have a little bit of shape shifting where like this meditation before us, that actually over on the here, we have 15-minute meditation. You see that like in the eyebrow?
Yep.
On forgiveness. It says 15 minutes. And there's a some-minute meditation on sunlight, but there's too much sunlight in that graphic to be able to actually see how long the meditation is. But if we go over to healing, now they've moved the minutes above it. Okay. But then we
and also like, I don't see a type now. Like the other one, oh, it does say meditation bigger, but I'm confused now. These are even more abstract to me. Like, what are these?
Like, what is relax? Like the 12-minute My Dear Body. Is it a meditation? Is it an article? Is it a relaxing article? Mantras. Okay, we also have mantras. We have audio affirmation. So we have all these things, and they just look exactly the same. Okay, and some of these things we could say, all right, like a mantra is a type of meditation. Cool, or like, but then we have these sections. We saw this in LingoPie, if you remember in LingoPie, and I have some screenshots for you too. We're going to jump into Whimsical in a second and really break this apart. So actually, let's go ahead and do that and hop into Whimsical and kind of show exactly how weird and bad and wrong this is and make it maybe a little bit better. Okay, so let's go over these screens in a little bit more detail and just kind of pick them apart from an OUX perspective. All right, so if we go back to this home screen here, we have read today. We have daily meditations. We've already established we've got articles and meditations. And when you click into them, they are very different things. Their purposes are different. The feel of them is different. But again, in their cards, they look exactly the same. So there's tiny little things that the designers could have done to really differentiate between an article and a meditation. And we'll talk about that.
This is giving me such Headspace vibes. This is like very, very similar. Even
Yes.
these detail pages, like
Yes.
these things are different, but they're not treating them different. And I'm wondering, like, did they look at Headspace to get some inspiration? They're kind of similar vibes of a product too.
I can guarantee they probably looked at Headspace. And this is what happens is patterns like Google comes out with something, and we've looked at Google,
Mhm.
Apple comes out with something, and then other designers just blindly copy it. And then what we're doing is we're perpetuating some of these really shit patterns actually. So we need to use our heads as UX designers and just and don't think like, oh, Headspace is so successful just because Headspace is it. Let's just like kind of copy them. We
We're
don't want
putting
to do
them in
that.
their, stopping them in their tracks. This is where it ends.
Yes. Yes, please. Okay, so two different things here, and then when we go over here, we have what we also saw in LingoPie, where we have a mix of theme-based headers and object-based headers. Okay,
Oh,
so what
interesting.
yeah, and I don't love this, especially when we're having masked objects. We've got shapeshifters, and it's like, what are these things? I have no idea what I'm going to click on when I click my dear body. Like, I don't know. Is this going to be an article, or is this going to be like, it could be a prayer. It could be a mantra. I don't know. Because then in these theme based headers, they are mixing up the different types of objects. It's just like, these are just stuff if you want to relax. And then, just click on it. And then, that's not relaxing to me, actually. I want to know what I'm going to get when I click on it. You see more of it here, object-based, like a prayer versus boost energy. Okay, we've got inner fire versus money meditation. Like, what the
They're like
hell is inner
relying on the
fire?
titles. Like I've been noticing they put in like sun mantra. So they're relying on the title to communicate what it is, which is just
Mm-hmm.
not enough. They're too
Right.
similar. It's not I can't just rely on just the visual. Like we can do so much more with visual cues to make these even just a little icon or something to say, hey, these are different.
And that's also a content strategy problem, because then you're going to have to really communicate that from a content strategy perspective of like, make sure to don't just put
Yes.
our father, make sure to write our father prayer, because people might not know what it is. Like,
And
no,
look,
no,
they
no,
didn't
there
do
should
that
be.
there. Yeah.
And then they didn't do it. And then, but they like money meditation is here. Is this an inner fire meditation? So then again, that's such a good point, Allie. Like that creates even more cognitive dissonance and that Zeigarnik effect again of like, ooh, like meditations say you were training the users that meditations are going to say meditation here, but then you see another one when it doesn't say meditation, and then you click on it and it is a meditation, then you're losing trust. The users are losing trust. And again, this is like very much in the back of the brain. Nobody's thinking about this as explicitly as we are, of course, because we're huge nerds. But this is happening tacitly. So, and then I think I did pull in that LingoPie. Yeah, here. This is what we were seeing before with LingoPie, where we see like telenovelas. That's an object-based header, and then solving mysteries. But like, is it a web series? Is it a
Oh,
telenovela?
this
Is it a
one.
podcast? It's a theme-based section or theme-based header, and then object-based header. So they're mixing as you scroll through. You get podcasts, and then you get brains in action.
That was another great example of masking. If you haven't
Yeah,
seen that one, like go watch that one. I mean, yeah, you're seeing a peek of it here.
yeah, yes. Okay, so a couple other things you can see the detail pages here, how we've got meditations and then mantras and then peace prayer, but then it also says a meditation here. Yeah, this is
Oh,
a mantra. So I'm like,
what is
what
wait,
are
wait,
these
wait, 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 wait,
things?
wait. We know that there's a prayer object. So now is that a
Yes.
prayer or meditate? Oh, this is the problem with
It's
relying on the content or the title of it to communicate what it
yeah.
is.
And I mean, we don't want to be too nitpicky about this. Like, you could say that a prayer is a kind of meditation, but
Sure.
you could also say that a mantra is a kind of, or a thing that you would use with a meditation. So I started doing a little OOUXing here, and I broke down, we've got meditation, prayer, let me zoom in a little bit more, article, and mantra, and started to think about what the actual structure of these things are. So a meditation is going to have an audio track. So prayer is going to have an audio track, but article and mantra Mantra does have an audio track too. Boop, boop. But an article doesn't, but it could have an audio track, right? So I'm just going to pop it over here and put that in like yeah, let's put it in the light color. Sure, that works. It doesn't have it now, but it could. But then you get these really significant differences as you move further and breaking it down. And I won't go through a full audit of this, but basically this is what helps you understand, are these things different or are they not different? You can start breaking down the core content, the metadata, also the nested objects, and even thinking about relationships. So for example, the prayer doesn't have, like right now, it doesn't have a transcript or a text for like saying it out loud, but I would actually expect that to be one of the core pieces of a prayer. Is something that the value is you actually saying it. So something like in Spotify where you get the lyrics and you can kind of karaoke style along with it would be really interesting. That would be very different than a meditation.
Yeah.
Okay. Like the way that I interact with the meditation is different than how I interact with the prayer. And that's going to be reflected in the core content and the metadata and how I organize these things in my mind and how I would expect them to be organized in an app like Moonly. So then what we can do is we can start saying, all right, let's try to differentiate these a little bit. So one thing to unmask objects that we love doing is just by like ratios and shapes. So I like to put an article kind of like it's like a piece of paper sort of style. So like having that kind of portrait orientation, the kind of 8.5 by 11 sort of communicates that this is an article or a text-based thing. Well, something like a meditation, maybe it's softer, rounder corners. So this is sometimes what we call like OOUX is sort of skeuomorphism 2.0. Like how can you use metaphor to sort of even subconsciously communicate what those things are? And then another thing that I like to do is look for a piece of really distinct metadata or core content to bring onto the card that says, this is what I am, right? This is what I do. So one thing for an article you could have, because with articles, you're going to have text, is you might, even if it's just a little tiny peek of the text, like the first like 4 words or something like that, or it could just kind of show you and like fade out a little bit, because that's going to be the most key piece of having an article. Also, what else do you have? Probably a lot of these are not very important, but the meditation, I would assume that the duration is going to be really, really important. So I probably have these prioritized too. And if you prioritize these with your team, then you will also notice that like the differentiating pieces of metadata usually do end up bubbling up to the top. Not always though. So there's just little things that you can do to say, okay, this piece of metadata really says that this is what this thing is, and feature it. So
I love it.
That's all I have. That's all I have for Moonly today.
Great lesson here. I can already picture how to design them more distinctly from this. And like this exercise would be great just to, talk with a design group and figure out, okay, how are these different? Let's unmask these. And this is something you can do with an existing product like this. You don't need a whole redesign. You can talk through this, come up with a long-term strategy, and then slowly put it in place, making those changes over time.
Yeah, there's really, really simple things we can do to unmask. I mean, even with those labels, adding even a little color coding, a little iconography too is something like if you don't want to change the ratios around, a little article icon, have a little meditation icon. But really this has to start with figuring out like what are the important things in the user's mental model, right? So like, and how do they think about these things? So this is where you want to bring in some user research if you can, is to say, do people think of mantras as meditations, or do they think of them as like a kind of a different thing? Is a prayer a type of meditation? This is a simple example, but especially when we get into these more complex domains, this is like one of the number one questions I end up asking stakeholders, and then often funneling down to research when the stakeholders are like, I don't know, are these two things different, or are these two things the same thing? And then if they are different, how do we differentiate them and make them recognizable so people know what the valuable things are?
Makes sense. I love it. Great example here.
All right. Cheers, y'all. Happy OUXing.
Happy
Find some
OUXing.
masked objects, unmask your masked objects, and let us know in the comments if you find any masked objects in the stuff that you're working on, the designs that you're working on, or anything that you're using, and maybe we'll roast them in the future. All right.
Ooh.
Happy OUXing.
Bye.